All right, folks, welcome to Sasquatch Unredacted. I'm Johnny Two Bears, and we got co-host there, Richard Farabee. How you doing, Richard?
The hostess with the mostest.
All right, you look
Yeah.
beautiful tonight, buddy.
Hey man, it's makeup. It's makeup. They put it backstage. They put makeup on and stuff like that. You
Oh
know.
man, well, you need to send them over here because I need some makeup. Apparently, all right,
Well,
Mister Athos is in the chat.
yes,
Steamboat
he
is in the
is.
chat. Good to go.
I see you
So,
got
what's been
the
going on with you?
banner.
Yeah, we got the banner in the mail. Thank you, sir. Looks
Did you get the
good,
cards
nice
yet?
and professional. Woo.
Yeah, I think. Look, here's mine.
Yeah.
Did
For
you get the
those of
cards
you,
yet?
but I have not checked the mail.
Okay.
Unfortunately, for the past 2 days, it feels like my shoulder blades are competing to pull my spine out of the back of my neck. So I haven't been doing much of anything except laying on my back. So
Right on. Right on.
yeah,
No, it looks good back there. You know,
yeah, we uh
it was pretty amazing
me,
because she did the order on Friday. You
yeah.
know, and by Tuesday, not only did I have mine, but you got yours in all the way in Georgia on Tuesday. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is pretty quick. Me and Richard and actually Mr. Athos is going to be meeting us down at the what is it, Richard?
The Great Florida Bigfoot Conference,
Yes.
and
We
they're
will
they're
be there.
and as it gets closer, they're already announcing more speakers. So I forget the name, but it's a local Indian tribesman. I forget his name, but he'll be there to talk about the skunk ape and the Seminole Indian history and stuff like that with the skunk ape. So that'd be really interesting to watch and meet that guy. So they're slowly putting them out there, slowly putting the names, and I think they're still working on getting people to be guest speakers and stuff like that. So you
Right.
can always volunteer, Johnny.
I wouldn't mind. I would really like to have a little more time than what we got now. I'm happy with this. This is going to be my first conference besides the Molina Festival. So I've never really been to any of them. Um, and that is mainly because my schedule, unlike 90% of the rest of the world, I never get weekends off. Now I finally have weekends off. So I'm going to take complete and total advantage of that. But speaking of which, February, probably the first week in February, me and a couple of the other guys from Sasquatch Encounter Brigade are going out to the Happy Place where you have been with us to start researching again. So
Yeah, it's a
super
great
excited
area.
about that.
Oh, I wish I could be there. I love that place. I still think about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty. So I mean, all anecdotal, but we had things happen while we were there. What was the name
Yeah.
of the one guy that was with me at the camp when you guys went walking? It was just me and him at the camp. Was it Hank?
Yeah. It was Hank that was with you.
Yeah, because me and him were just sitting there, sitting in the chairs and just talking. And I swear to God, I heard talking. I just heard mumbling. Like I thought it was you guys coming back from the woods. And I
Right.
even stood up and I go, "Do you hear that?" And he said, "Yeah, I hear it." And so I started walking, where that one area where me and you walked to go in there and we saw the stump with all the nuts
Hmm.
on the top. So I started walking towards that because that thought that's the direction you guys were coming from, because that's where the sound was coming from. So I stood there expecting to see you and whoever walking out of the woods. I was just going to say, "Hey guys, how'd it go?" Nothing. I stood there for 15, 20 minutes and nobody came out. So I went back and sat down, continued to hear it was muffled. It's like you can hear talking, but you couldn't make out what was being said. Like if
Right.
somebody was in another room or something like that. And then all of a sudden we saw you guys like 200 yards down coming out of the woods down that, the power or the, what do you call the gas line,
Hmm.
guys coming out there. So I was like, dude, it wasn't them. I don't know who it was. So
Yeah. It's they're definitely out there. That is the same exact spot where me, Captain Joe, and Scott DeForest all had our sightings, where Happy Harris had his event happen when he was 19 years old. So they are definitely out there. But
well,
after the last after our sightings, there hasn't been I've had a few things happen. a few throws. Had the side of my Bronco slapped one night. Like me and Hank were out there, it was just him and I, and we both go to sleep, and I'm in the passenger side seat, and I'm trying to get comfortable, and I just started to doze off, and I hear whack right on the driver's side door, and I get my phone out, I start recording, nothing happens. I don't know, maybe I stay up for about 30 minutes. Finally, I go back to sleep. I get up, Hank gets up, and I said, "Yeah, man, something, I don't know what happened. It sounded like something slapped this driver's side door." And we're looking around everywhere, and Hank's like, "Well, what is this?" And at the very bottom of the door, there was a handprint bigger than my hand, just right at the very bottom of the door. Like, I don't even know how, like, you would have to lay on your belly and then slap it in order to get your hand like that. Like, I
Right,
don't even
right.
know how, you know. But other than that, that same spot that where we set up all the tents, for the past 3 or 4 times, when we go in there and set everything up, there's birds and squirrels that start going nuts, and then we have record a couple vocalizations, very low vocalizations, but they seem to always come to that corner. So, I don't know,
Well,
man.
I was excited the first because when we got there, we had just driven what 12, 13 hours to get there.
Right.
And so once we got everything set up and the tents were set up and everything, I was really tired and want to lay down. And I remember laying down and I heard, and it was probably, I don't know, an hour into laying there and stuff like that. What, and I told y'all the next morning, it sounded like an Indian, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I smiled. I was like, "Oh, this is great." That was I don't know what kind of vocal that was. That's why I got up next morning and I was asking people, what kind of birds y'all have here? What kind of animals y'all have here? Because it
Yeah.
literally sounded like that meme where that Indian's on the horse. He's like, oh, oh, you know,
Yeah.
and it sounded like that. And it was really loud. And so I was excited, like, okay, man, if it's already starting like this, I've only been here an hour, 2 hours or whatever. This is going to be a great weekend. So I think there was a lot of anecdotal stuff. I think it's a fantastic area. It's beautiful for one. We
Yeah.
don't have land like you guys with creeks running through it and a lot of hardwoods, and I really liked it a lot. I really did.
Well, it is absolutely filled to the brim with hogs and deer. So there's more than enough resources out there. Plus, you've got water. Even at the hottest part of the summer and the driest part of the summer, there is water in that creek. It's very low, but there's still water there. So, and it is out in the middle of just absolutely nowhere.
Yeah,
For Georgia, that's pretty rural,
right.
So it's a great spot. Anyway, let's get down to it. Tonight we have a gentleman by the name of Danny Huff. I have talked to Danny before, uh, interviewed him before. We've kept in contact and stuff, and I wanted him to come on and share his sightings. It's from what I remember, I believe he was hunting while that was going on, and we all love a good hunter sighting story. So we're gonna bring Danny on. Mr. Danny Huff, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing well. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Now, when I say hunter, normally that means like me on the weekends for fun or for meat. That is not Danny Huff. Danny Huff, tell everybody what you do for a living.
I'm a hired killer, man.
Yeah,
uh, I
Twenty
kill
dollars is $20.
I kill things with 6 legs and some with 4. So
is mother-in-law's on that list? Asking for a friend.
no, and I do once in a while assist my son with his business. He's a firefighter, but
Right,
he also has a trapping business, and he goes out and shoots coyotes and hogs and helps farmers and ranchers out.
right.
And
Man, out of all the jobs in the world, man, that's the greatest one out there. That's excellent.
yeah,
Well, all right, man. Me and Richard are going to give you the stage. We are going to do like we always do and shut our mouths, and you just tell us what happened. Start where you want. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then whenever you're done, we'll hop on, ask you some questions. Sound
I was
good?
gonna say anytime you want to just say, hold on, let me ask you a question, just fire away. It'll be fine.
All
But
right.
yeah, I'm no spring chicken. I'm 65 years old, and I do love to hunt, and spent a lot of time in the woods from the time I was a kid hunting with my dad, all the way up until the present. Um, I have I have heard wood knocks all my life. Now, granted, I didn't understand what I was hearing. All I knew when I would hear these knocks uh, is that they sounded the same every time, every year, everywhere I ever hunted. And they would, like I said earlier, they sounded like a base hit, sound like a baseball bat hitting a ball. And so I have heard things through the years, and then as got to going down the Bigfoot rabbit hole, you learned about the wood knocks and whatnot. The sighting that I want to tell you about first is it was in 2003, 2004, somewhere. It was the opening day of the archery season. I had a blind set up. I had a mineral sight that everything was hitting it very hard. It was goodness, the deer and hogs. They were just tearing this mineral site up, and probably 150 yards from my back door. But it was on a creek, maybe 200 yards. I don't know. But anyway, it was on a creek. Okay, and this particular morning, I went and got into my blind. And normally I would carry a revolver with me. I didn't this morning. But as soon as I got in the blind and got set up, and it was still dark, zipped everything up, and we're just kind of waiting. Man, it sounded like a dump truck coming across the creek and just tearing up creation. Now, I have heard hogs, I've heard deer, I've heard livestock, I've heard all manner of animals create havoc. Nothing sounded like this. Nothing. And things breaking. And it made a beeline to where I was at that mineral site. And it stood behind me. Okay. It stood behind me, and this. Do you know what an outhouse blind is? Have you the Ameristep outhouse blind? It's kind of. It looks like a triangle, kind of. But anyway, that thing stood, and I could hear it. I could hear it breathe. I could hear it sniff, and I started to get uneasy. I guess that's the putting it lightly. To be honest with you, I thought I was going to have to change my clothes. And I'm sitting there and I'm praying, and this thing is just standing there. And I just expected for this blind to be just ripped away, right? And this was my time. I was leaving. The Lord was calling me in by way of Sasquatch. But anyway, I just sit there and as it got light, as it started to get light, I noticed it. Okay, I'm not hearing the breathing. Okay, and so I didn't hear it walk away. All right, but I get brave enough to pull that zipper down to where I had a space to look out about the size of a nail head, maybe. Just something where I could just look out there and see. And like I said, I never heard it walk away. All right. But when I looked, and I didn't examine, okay, but I looked, and there's this joker. He is about my size, maybe. Not if he was bigger, it wasn't much bigger. I don't think so. But it was like he was standing there. To be honest with you, he looked he had that gorilla look to him, okay? And he I could see he was kind of quartering this, kind of toward my house, right? And just standing just straight, just not just kind of looking, and his head was turned like this, but I couldn't see any features, right? So I just continued praying, and so as time passed, it gets good daylight. Like I said, never heard it move, never heard it go away. And I got brave enough to pull it down just a little bit more. Finally, down, and things gone. And when I felt like I had, it was safe enough for me to go back up to the house, I beat feet back to the house. And that was that sighting. Never had anything like that again while I was there at that house. Prior to that, my son and I had set a trap that you catch coyotes with. It was a big live catch trap out, and I had put some freezer burned roast in it. And excuse me, I went down to check it. Now this is before this had happened, before the sighting. I went down to check that trap, and that something had rolled that trap about 40 yards and just mashed it flat. Okay. This is like I said, this is like, and I figured, you know what I thought at that time? I'm thinking bear. Okay. Yeah. Even though it's Walton County. All right. There is the occasional bear sighting in Walton County. And so that's what I chalked it up to until I had that sighting. And then I figured, you know what, this thing was probably the same thing that tore up my live catch trap and got that freezer burnt roast. But that was that sighting. And
now, what up until that point, have you really given much thought to the topic?
Well, and I had, I watched the Patterson Gimlin film, and I as a kid, and then I never really, I didn't doubt it. I didn't doubt that it was real, but I just never give any thought to anything like that being in Georgia. You know how you always heard that it was all, Pacific Northwest and all of that. But I didn't really, I guess, when did I go down that rabbit hole? It was definitely after that sighting. I mean, started down the rabbit hole.
That'll do
but
it.
I didn't really. I didn't. Everything I look at now on. Of course, we didn't have the what we have now on the internet back then. But man, I listen to every Bigfoot podcast there is, I think.
Did you tell anybody that you knew, family or friends?
I I think I told you when I talked to you and Joe the first time about this. I think I told you that I told everybody that I saw a bear because I've got this. I saw something. I've got to tell that I saw something.
Yeah.
And I can't just bottle it up but yeah, it was a while before I actually told people what it was. And of course, you know what to get.
Oh yeah.
People start doing this. Get away.
Yep. That's why it's so hard for people to come forward a lot of times. Is
Yeah,
you don't even feel like you can tell your own
well,
friends and family.
right. And then you get this. Well, I've hunted all my life, and I ain't never seen nothing like that.
Yeah.
Yes, you get that kind of reaction a lot of time.
Well, that's because, and then all you got to do is tell them, like you're talking about podcast,
Yeah.
Sasquatch Chronicles. I don't even know what they're up to now. Are they over 1,000 now? But
I don't know.
I know sometimes there's Wes has like 2 or 3 guests on per episode, and that's just one of many podcasts.
Right.
Like
Well,
there's
look at
thousands of
Jeremiah
sightings.
Byron. Yeah. Jeremiah Byron. Are you familiar with his podcast?
I've heard.
Bigfoot
What's the name of
Society?
it?
Bigfoot Society.
Yeah. I've heard.
Yeah. I've heard it.
Yeah, and then of course the guy with the guy that put Bigfoot on TV for everybody, Doug Hychek, his Untold, whatever it is, Untold Radio.
Richard's actually been interviewed by Doug, I believe, haven't you?
Yeah. A few months ago, I was on the Untold Radio Network.
Yeah, there you go. But I mean, for the amount of let me say this: do I think every single story is true? Not being there with the individual, I can't say yes or no. I know what I saw. Do I think some people make stuff up? Yeah, people being people, I would say they do.
Right.
What the How to Hunt guy, Steve Isdall. He reads email after email after email after email,
Right.
and of people's sightings, and you go, yeah, man, that. Sometimes they get a little out there, but yeah, this thing, I don't know. Is it? I'd like to say I have an opinion on what it is. Is it? Can it go back and forth? Is it interdimensional? Is it just an ape? Is it just I don't know. I'm still blown away by it. But let me tell you, I don't think, just based on what I saw from Scott Carpenter, I don't think all of them are the Patty type. I think there's a lot of different variations of that thing out there. I told you, I mentioned the hillbillies earlier. Of squirrel hunting, and this was probably, I don't know, Johnny. I'm going to say 7-8 years ago, maybe. It could be. Time starts to fly when you get as old as me. But me and a buddy of mine, we were out there. We were squirrel hunting, and along a creek. And the way this creek is down here, and a power line runs this way up here. Okay, so we're going down the creek, and I'm looking up. It was leaves off the trees. We always squirrel hunt after the deer season, and try to find them laid out on the limb. And pick them off with a 22. But I'm looking up in the pines, and this huge, huge pine tree there were two limbs up probably 50, 60 feet. They were one come off this direction from the tree. The other one was just up just a little bit higher and come off this direction. Well, there were two fellas sitting up there with their back against the trunk of the tree. One leg folded up in a figure four, the other leg hanging down off the limb, and they had their head thrown back like this, both of them, and their hand on top of their head like that, like they were just reclining. And all I could see, I couldn't see any detail. I shoot iron sights anyway, and but I couldn't see any detail. But the silhouette, they had like round heads, and they about the size of a chimp. It was probably, I would say, from their butt to the top of their head was probably maybe been 3 feet, 4 feet. But that was weird. Now, my buddy, to this day, I think I told you this. He still refers to them as raccoons. And in fact, it wasn't too long ago. I said, "Hey, buddy," he said, "Remember them two hillbilly?" He goes, "Yeah, man, them two coons up we, yeah." He knows good and well. He knows good and well. They were not coons. They were just entirely too big for that. And I've never seen. I researched. I've got online many times when I think about this, and I have tried to find a picture of a coon with its back up against a tree. I've Googled reclining raccoon. Da, 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 da. They're always facing the trunk.
Right.
Every time.
Well, like we were talking about before, the size in general. You're not.
Yeah.
That's a big
raccoons could get, the big raccoons that you see in people's houses that they're feeding, Eggo waffles. That's one thing, but that's still nowhere near the size of a human.
Right.
How far away did you say y'all were from this tree?
I would say we were probably 60 yards, maybe 50, 60 yards, no more than that. And they were up maybe 50 or 60 feet.
Right.
But you understand, we're down here looking up, and but that was that was an experience there, buddy.
Yeah.
And but anyway, and didn't see any tracks. Of course, I mean, it's all wooded and everything, but there was just never seen any tracks cross the power line. Only thing I've seen down there that was out of the ordinary, was a panther track.
Really?
Yeah, it was a cat track about the size of a football. I mean, a softball.
Well, that in itself would be a little unsettling.
It was.
What county was that? Was that what you said? Walt? Was it
Taliaferro? Was where that was. Taliaferro. Tolliver.
Okay, that's the one we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was the hillbillies were about 5 miles from where I'd heard the wood knocks on the other place.
Right.
Yeah. So
now let me go back. Let's go back to the first sighting. What color was the hair? Could you tell?
Well, it was dark.
Right.
The best I could, tell, because you still have the canopy there. I didn't see any variation in color,
Right. And
But
about
there
how tall are
again,
you?
I give you a lengthy description of what I looked at in just a quick few seconds.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to do is process what I'm seeing, and I'm trying to, you go, okay, this is not supposed to be here.
Right.
You know, just all this stuff just goes through your mind when you see this, and it's just you try to explain it to someone, and they're ready to get the white coats, man.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
ready
a
to have
lot of
you
people,
committed.
the whole bear thing, it kind of irritates me a little bit. I understand that
Yeah.
people can misidentify animals
No.
from a distance. Very, very, very good possibility. But I've never looked at one animal and thought it was another animal. Like when you're looking at the head and the shoulders and everything else, animals look like what they look like.
Right.
You're not, there's nothing about like the Sasquatch that we saw. There was nothing about them that I could have, maybe if I saw a 1 foot by 1 foot patch through the woods and didn't see a face, then I could say, all right, bear. But if you
Mhm.
see, you see the full upper body of something, you can't confuse a bear for something else or vice
Right.
versa to me. I think that excuse is used a whole lot just to try to, make like you did, try to make yourself feel better,
Right.
Well, yeah,
Exactly.
I think a child can identify a bear.
Right.
Sure.
It's not. I've driven, to work. I go to work pretty early and it's dark, and I had a bear run right out in front of my truck. I knew it was a bear right away. I didn't
Right.
mistake it for anything. It's very distinct, and that's. I'm like you. It gets irritating when you tell somebody something. They're like, "Oh, you saw a bear." I'm a grown man. I know the difference between a bear and not a bear.
Right.
So
We and
Was
most
that
of us start sleeping with one between, as soon as we're born up until,
right?
a couple of years, for Christ's sakes. So I don't know.
some of us still
I don't
do.
know, man. Yeah, some of we got to tell all the secrets on the podcast, Richard. Come on now. Yeah, it's,
We did go camping together twice.
yeah. Yeah, I did not steal Richard's teddy bear, I promise.
No, those are fine words.
Yeah. So it never affected you after that, though, when it came to going out and hunting and fishing and everything. I don't guess. Maybe you just thought about it later on.
No, and I don't know. I've asked myself that question, and this is what I think. I think somewhere, in processing all this, I go, well, I'll probably never ever see another one.
Right.
I'll probably that happened, and Walton and the other one over there in Tolliver, and I'm just saying, yeah, okay, maybe not. Um, I I'm always armed when I'm in the woods. I have. I think it's safe to say more than I really need going into the woods. But if I don't think I could just. I don't think if I saw one, I don't think I could pull the trigger on it, Johnny. I just don't. Not unless it was threatening me.
Yeah.
Uh, I
I'm the
just
same way.
don't think. Yeah, I don't think I could do that. Um, and two, I don't. I don't need to convince anyone. Uh, I'm convinced because I'm not a I'm a knower. Okay,
Right.
I know what I saw. You know what you saw,
Right.
and
Well, I've
I don't
never
know,
I've
man.
never met anybody that's seen one and then down the road changed their mind.
Right. Right.
It just doesn't happen. So
Right. Well, you know what you know.
right.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you that the ones that you saw, they Johnny, doing the spider crawl.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that just, man,
Well,
if that thing had a, ooh,
yeah.
ooh,
When at
ooh.
first, and Scott's the one that saw it. Me, I'd already seen it, and then about 6 minutes later, it walks. I think it hung around and intentionally walks in front of Joe. Me and Joe come back together, and we're following behind it, and it's making noises and breaking stuff. And I stop at the creek, and there's its fingers in the mud, which verifies what happens later on, because what's his name? Scott. Scott's back at camp in the bed of his truck, because I called him and told him what had happened. And he said that a couple minutes later, after I call him, something comes out on all fours, and he can't tell what in the world it is until it does a button hook and like faces towards him, when he realizes what he's looking at. And that thing's doing the spider crawl. It's got his arms, jacked out like this, and his head up like a periscope like this. And then it turns and then goes back in the wood line. And about 10 yards away, me and Joe come walking out. Now, we knew the whole time that thing was in front of us, but we didn't see it again.
Mm-hmm.
But we had no idea it was only 10 yards away from us when we came back out in that field, And for him, that's what was so cool about those. Physically, the best evidence I've ever captured myself is those, I can't remember whether it's 3 or 4 fingerprints in the mud, literally just happened like a minute before we walked up. And then Scott verifies that he saw it on all fours. So that whole thing was, and then again, 45 minutes later, all 3 of us see the bigger one run across the field again, I believe intentionally. And that's pretty much what has sent me down the road of, along with a lot of other people that have seen them on all fours. I think that has a lot to do with how they're getting away with the things that they're getting away with, how they're hiding so well, and how they're even if you've got something that's 7 foot 8 inches tall and 4 feet wide, as soon as it drops down to its belly, that's it in the woods, especially with the way their hair is. So it's a very, very crazy but very useful adaptation, I believe.
But
But
I
anyway,
agree, because that's what was brought up when I was talking to Carrie about my encounter the first time. The thing could have been right in front of me. Could have been 20 feet in front of me, but it was behind palmettos. You know what I mean? They get, and palmettos get pretty big, but these were 3 to 4 feet. It wouldn't take much to hide behind them. Wouldn't take much, no matter how big you are.
One thing that I have thought about over and over is, about the sighting down there in Monroe when I was hunting. Is the size of this thing didn't match up with the noise that it made coming across the creek. I said it. I told you it sounded like a dump truck coming across the creek. It was stout. It was stout. There, I've seen pictures on various sites where I said, yeah, it looked similar to that. And was how thick a gorilla is, a silverback gorilla, right? I mean, but if they're standing 5 feet tall or whatever, what do they weigh? 400 pounds, 5 maybe. A big one be 500. But man, to make the kind of noise, I still can't wrap my mind around that.
Well, it may have been that there may have been more than one there. Maybe that was just the smaller out of the two. You
Right.
know?
There's that. Yeah, there's that. You know.
That could have been the girlfriend and the daddy was on the other side, you know?
Yeah,
Who knows?
good.
How tall are you, Danny?
I'm 6'4".
Okay.
Yeah, that's still pretty big, especially with like you're saying, the muscle mass on those things.
Yeah,
But
it's wild. You remember me telling you about my cousin's incident, right? Out around Elberton, outside of Elberton.
yes,
It,
how about you tell us that one?
yeah, they were him and his wife were they were doing what we called a round. In other words, there was a particular route that we'd take using fleers, and we were hunting hogs and all. But this particular time, they were doing a round. They were by themselves, and my cousin was just he was just a few feet in front of his wife, not really that far ahead of her at all. But something grabbed her and pulled her back, and she absolutely screamed. And just, I mean, it light stone pulled and let go. And he turns around, nothing, nothing, absolutely nothing. And prior to that, uh, we were down on the creek. Now, granted, there's a lot of granite, and the creek that runs through his place runs through granite. I mean, it's granite everywhere out there. And we're sitting on this log. We're using a flare. We're looking for hogs, and all of a sudden we hear this. We hear this. It sound like Orientals talking, and it was probably less than 100 yards from us, and we were just absolutely undone over that. And I played when we got back to the cabin. I played Ron Moorhead sounds, that he had, and it sounded just like that. Sounded just like the stuff, the Sierra sounds that he had, and that right there just that right there made our hair stand up. But yeah, they've had stuff. They've had rocks, not big rocks. They've had rocks thrown up on the tin roof of the cabin while they're
Now,
down there.
is he into this stuff? I can't remember. I know we talked about it
He,
before, but
he,
is he interested or is he a little bit of denial or
I think is I don't think he is totally on board. Let me just put it that way.
no?
Uh, but he knows, he knows something happened. He knows his wife was physically touched out there in those woods, and yeah, she don't like to talk about it.
No.
It gets her, it creeps her out.
Yeah,
But
that's a really good of example. Like when you see people, and I did the same thing. But when you see people go out with guns, and they're like, "Oh, I got this caliber, blah blah blah," and then flashlights and all this stuff, I just don't think people get it. I do not think they really understand what they're dealing with. These
hmm
things are their speed, their intellect, their agility. By the time you get your gun up, the thing's gone already. And imagine
right,
the confidence. And, it's obviously, these things are obviously, I believe, self aware. And imagine the confidence you have to have as an individual or a Sasquatch to see two people hunting in the dark and then be like, no big deal. I'm just going to walk up and grab this person on the shoulder and then run off. And I know there's nothing they can do about it.
Right.
That's people need to understand that, especially if you
Right.
get involved in doing this and going after them.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people, we talked about this before the other day, that when it comes to fear, I used to be scared, being out in the woods at night with these things, actually trying to find them. But then it got to the point to where, why? Because me being scared, I'm giving myself the impression that I have a choice or I have some kind of say so in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe we do. I think
You
it's
do.
just
You can go home.
that's
Right,
about it.
right.
You can go home, and that highlights exactly what I'm talking about,
Well,
Right.
I've heard stories, and I don't know if there's any truth to it, but Native Americans have said that there is a rite of passage with Sasquatch where they have to
Mhm.
touch a person. And
Right.
there's been a lot of stories where, I heard this one story, the guy hid behind a tree because he knew this thing was coming down the trail, and then it got quiet and he was behind a tree, like on a hill, like it's a trail, and it kind of sloped up on a hill, and the tree was jetted out. So he was laying on the tree looking down on the trail, and then something came up behind him and touched his shoulder. You
Right.
know what I mean? And they said it's a rite of passage. It's kind of like bravery to them that, hey, I touched a human.
Right.
Counting.
Counting. Exactly. Counting coup.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got the human cootie.
And they are good at it. They are experts.
Mm-hmm.
So anything else
Hide and
happen?
seek champion. No, that's about all I've got, unless something happens later on.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
What about
he
your
did.
cousin?
Yeah, he did tell me that he was out next to his barn. His barn's probably 200 yards from the cabin, and that actually the barn's not very far from where she got touched. But excuse me. He was out doing something around the barn. I don't know, looking for a tool or whatever. And this was in broad daylight, and he said something just on the other side of there's a deep ditch behind the barn. On the other side of that ditch, he said not too far. He said he heard something. He said it was a human whistle. He said it was not it sounded like a human whistle. He said it was not a bird.
Right.
And then he said he heard, and then that was it. That was all. And yeah, just that's
I've recorded that sound. I've recorded that, just that
yeah.
deep guttural, just a grunt,
Mm-hmm. That
Man, how long has he been out there on that property?
oh gosh. Johnny, I'm going to say this month. I think this is the 5th or 6th year. I think this is the
Okay.
6th year. And but it's rich to me. That place is rich.
Yeah.
It's rich. It's rich with activity in my book. Now you welcome to come to my deer lease, and we can check something out. Over there. I tell you, I'm going to find the pictures where the pines were broke off that I
Yeah.
was telling you about earlier, and shoot those. And one thing that I didn't mention when I was talking about that earlier is when I was rounding the corner. It's a logging road. I was rounding the corner, and right before I smelled the pine, I got a whiff of just filth.
Yeah.
It, and it lingered. Oh gosh, it lingered for a minute, maybe a minute. Not long,
Right.
but it was long enough. When I first smelled it, I go, not, I'm going, am I smelling something? And then it went away. But then I saw the pine, and it was it's pretty wild, man.
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
It could be out there.
Well, they are out there. I I will ask you, what do you think they are?
Man, I honestly do not know.
Yeah.
I'm still stuck on the fact that they are,
Yeah.
that they do exist.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's
There's
hard enough
part
to
of me,
deal with, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. I like obviously in our own research as a group and what Richard does and everything else. The goal is to just prove that they exist. Period.
Mm.
As to what they are, man, I don't know the variations in the way they look. Like you were talking about that before.
Mm.
I just don't know. I really don't. They seem too intelligent just to be a regular primate. Even from just the things that I've experienced myself, like the plans, like that the day of those sightings we had, it seemed like they had a plan and they executed that plan. Now, some animals do that. Predators do that when they're sneaking up on something, and they're thinking through the hunt, but we're
Yeah.
not. This was a completely different level,
Mhm.
so I really don't know, man. My best guess is, the reason why I think this is, if we know what we know, and over the past 7 years, if I've been able to accomplish what I've been able to accomplish, just some dude doing this on his own time, I think the government knows everything. And the
I'm
only
with you on that.
reason,
Yeah.
right? And the only reason why, there's two reasons why they wouldn't tell us or have anything to do. Number one, probably has to do with money. The fact that they don't want to hurt the outdoor industry, the logging industry, and all that stuff. But number
Mhm.
two, it seems like it would make a lot of sense that somehow, some way, there's some type of genetic connection in between us and them. There's something about them that they don't want us to know, because
It's like, yeah, because I lean more. Originally, I was pro some sort of ape, you know, in that lineage. But as time goes by, you start looking at things and analyzing things deeper, and then you realize it's more than that. So I lean more towards a proto-human. And I think that would be a good thing to hide from the general public, that there is another race of humanoids, hominoids, just
right.
another race. It's not necessarily connected to us, it's just living parallel with us. And I think it would bring up the questions of how old is the earth? How long has this thing been here, and how long? I think it just brings up a lot of questions that I don't think the government wants us to know, or something like that. I'm a true believer they do know. I think they do know. I think they've had them.
So too.
I think they've captured them. I think
Mhm.
they've checked them out. But it's one of those we have to wait and see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have often thought, at some point, um, there were an experiment gone wrong, but then you have, the Native American depictions of these things in caves, right? So they've been around. Scott Carpenter, his stand on it was that they're Nephilim.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't subscribe to that one.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. I don't either. I don't believe that either.
Yeah, and the only reason I don't is, I definitely believe in the Bible, and I definitely
Right,
believe
right,
that Nephilim existed or whatever. It doesn't meet. If you take a Sasquatch description and you take a Nephilim description, there's no similarity. There's just no
right.
similarity. And
Six
so
fingers, six toes. Yeah.
right now, and Johnny's heard this. Johnny's been in the military, and you hear about the Kandahar giant and stuff like that. And if those stories are true, those seem to be more Nephilim, by the rows of teeth and the fingers and how big
Mhm.
they were and stuff like that. And
Right.
if those things are real, and I've heard different stories where even Apache helicopters have seen them, running up hillsides in Afghanistan and stuff like that. I would agree and say, okay, that would be Nephilim. I just don't think Sasquatch is. You know what I mean? And especially
Right.
if we define giant, what is giant? 6-7 feet tall is not giant. Shaquille
Right.
O'Neal's 7'3". We got a
Right.
basketball player with the University of Georgia now. I mean, University of Florida now. That's 7'9". Extremely tall, but would you classify him as a giant? See what I'm saying? But those
Yeah.
things in Kandahar and Afghanistan and all that, those sound like giants.
Yeah.
Well, to back up that story, actually, I don't know anybody involved in that one, but we tried, or Captain Joe did. Captain Joe's got a buddy that I believe was in the Rangers with him, and I can't remember the dude's name. We didn't put it out there because Joe was trying to get the guy to agree to come on and tell his story. But I do know he played for the University of Texas. He was really good friends with Joe. I think they went to either served as Rangers together or went through Ranger school together. But anyway, he was in Afghanistan, this dude that is Joe's buddy. And they were using a targeting device, an LRAS. I can't remember whether it's LRAS 3 or LRAS 7. It's been a while since I looked at that. But basically, it's just like the night vision or thermal goggles or thermal binoculars or whatever. And they're looking over on across this mountain range, and they see what looks like a massive humanoid running down the side of the mountain faster than any, I didn't go to Afghanistan. I spent my time in Iraq, but from everything I've heard, you can't just run down the mountain in Afghanistan like that. All that shell and that rock that they got out there. But this thing was just hauling butt down this mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually called in. I can't remember if it was a helicopter or a jet, but they called in air support to come check it out and verify what it was, if they could get a better look at it. And sure enough, the pilot described exactly what he described.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very large humanoid figure running around the side of this mountain. And, good God, I'd love to have that video. Could you imagine? And we tried to get the guy to come on, but Sunshine says she is late, but she is here now. Hello, Richard, Johnny, and Danny. Thank you, Sunshine, for joining us. So I definitely believe, I tend to believe some of these stories coming from over there. And in fact, Captain Joe, another guy that he met before he even got into all this stuff, he said he was on a flight and got to talking to this other dude. That dude was in special forces. I believe he was a Green Beret. And they got to talking, and that dude told Captain Joe about that story, the Giant of Kandahar, and that he knew people that was involved. Now, back then, Joe had no interest in this. And it's like, okay, dude, whatever, And then later on, he has his sighting. And then he's like, he thinks back to that guy telling him the story, So there's plenty of stories coming out of that area. And that part of the world is absolutely ancient.
It's all biblical over there. It's all
right.
biblical area, and so yeah, and as a person that does believe, religious wise, I think it's possible. Absolutely.
No.
Me being in the Navy, I've been out in the middle of the ocean where you can't see land for 1,000 miles around you. and we saw, and I've told people this before, I'm 17, 18 years old at the time. So I'm young, new, don't know much. And me and a half a dozen guys are at the back or on the side of the boat towards the rear of the boat. And I thought it was a submarine, but it was a shark. It was that big. It was huge. And it just went,
Jesus.
we were going one direction and it was going, and it literally, if I just stepped off, took a large step off the boat, I would land on its back. That's how close it came to the side of the ship.
Wow.
And it was huge. And you know, I tell people in the past, I saw this shark, man. The thing was massive. And that was back, late 80s and then early 90s. Well, now here we are in the 2000s, and they're talking about, well, the megalodon could still be alive and could still be out there. And then it dawns on my head, maybe that's what I saw, because I was new. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, I'll probably see that again. Or
you didn't know anything about the ocean, did you?
Didn't know jack. Didn't know. I knew it didn't taste good. That's all I knew.
Yeah. And you think back to those times, and they hand you a rifle or hand you a little bit of responsibility, and you think you know everything. You think you're a grown man.
No, I purposely let them know I didn't know anything because I didn't want any responsibility.
That's one way to go.
Yes, sir.
Right. Oh man. Yeah, man. Well, Danny, we really appreciate you coming on, bud.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Enjoyed it.
Is there anybody in the chat room that has any questions for Danny? Put them in caps so we know it's a question for Danny. And Danny, can you see the chat?
I cannot see the chat.
Okay, so if we see a question for anybody, then Johnny will read it out loud and have you answer it if anybody's got any questions. I know earlier somebody asked what state.
Oh, I do have, while we're waiting on that, I do have an update on now. Danny is participating in our little project for the affidavits.
Good.
And again, these affidavits, the only reason why they exist and we have people to sign them is because one day at the end of doing all this or whatever, I want to have a big stack of paperwork that says, hey, look, we got all these people that are 100% willing to state that Sasquatch is a real creature. And all I did, we on the first podcast episode, we had Lenny on here, Mr. Athos. He's our lawyer, or a lawyer that's working with us. And he came up with the affidavit. Now, all I've done, and what we did is I've been taking input from people. Me and Leonard have talked about it. Richard and I have talked about it, and really try to really pay attention to the way people would think about this project or approach it, or the pros and the cons. And my biggest fear was that this could be used. I did not want it to be used or to look like we're questioning people's integrity. That's not what's going on at all. Or else, I'm not best friends with Danny, but I feel like me and Danny are, you could say we're friends. There's not a this isn't a gotcha thing. This is a project to hopefully make it official, to say, look, people are actually seeing these creatures and they're willing to sign their name to a piece of paper. So all I did was make it a lot simpler. And I'll go ahead and read this out. And Danny, he's already been sent it. He's just got to print it out and sign it. Like I said, we are I'll be putting it on the Facebook page, and we will definitely keep up with how many we get. But I'll be blacking out the names, or just not the names, but the signatures, because I don't want to start putting people's signatures online. But I just made it super simple, so I'm going to reread it. Affidavit of veracity. I, then you put your name, being of sound mind and health, and having attained the age of majority, do hereby solemnly swear and affirm and declare under oath that I have seen the creature known as Sasquatch or Bigfoot, and an other item, Bigfoot, and any other item produced in furtherance of my statement and the furtherance of this declaration is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And I have not directly or indirectly said, produced, or caused to be said, or produced anything that is not completely, absolutely the truth to the best of my knowledge, belief, and ability. So there we go. And then you just sign your name. But again, Danny, thank you for participating in that. And me and Richard will be, we've just gotten started. So we have had people volunteer. And when people volunteer to be on, we want to take advantage of that. But there will be
Sure.
times where we won't have a guest. And that is when myself and Richard will be telling our stories, and we will be, signing these ourselves.
Mhm,
So, hopefully, we get, a good amount of people to participate. But anyway,
Well, like you said, it's having the person telling the story putting a little skin in the game,
right,
and saying that, like I said, if you're standing up there and you got to stack this high and you're holding it up saying all these people cannot be lying, you know
right,
what I mean? And I think it's a good thing. I think it's can people still lie to us? Absolutely. You know what I mean?
no,
But here's an affidavit that says I'm telling the truth. This is what I saw, and
mhm.
that's what I experienced. And I think it's
right,
good that they got the skin in the game, and they want to help further the cause.
yep. So we appreciate it, Danny, and we appreciate your time. It does not look like we have any questions, so I guess we're going to go ahead and let everybody go. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you to everyone in the chat that joined and participated. Richard, you got anything else?
No, we do have some scheduled guests coming up soon. We have a gap that I'm trying to fill. Me and you discussed it. There's some dates in there. I think you were going to try and talk to one of your guys or whatever. But we do have a really good guest coming up. It's a couple. It's a team. A male and female. So it'll be our first female on the show, which is exciting. You know what I mean? I don't want to deter women. Y'all should come on too if you've had a sighting or whatever. And these are two people that spend a lot of time in the woods, a lot, way more than I do. And
Yeah.
To be interesting to talk to them and get their perspective. That's coming up the second Saturday of February. Yeah.
No, it was on your oh, that is actually, I'm glad we talked. You get to be in charge of that one because I am going to be in the field. That's going to be our first weekend back out at the happy place. So we got to get you up to date on running all this cool equipment and stuff. So
Well, I need to sign another affidavit that says I did the best of my ability.
yeah.
Third, yes, third. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean they were, and it's my fault. We had them scheduled for the first weekend of February, which is February 1st, first Saturday, and we're doing on a Saturday, everybody, because that's their schedule. We like to do it on Friday nights, but their schedule is very busy. She's a nurse, and that's the only opportunity we have to have them both. And he won't do it without her because they're a team. But I'm celebrating my birthday on February 1st, so
Yeah.
so we had to change it because of people wanting to get together with me and stuff like that. So,
Well, good to go, man. All right, Danny. Thanks again, everybody in the chat and everybody who's going to be watching this. We appreciate it. And if anyone else would like to be a guest on Sasquatch Unredacted, send an email to sasquatchunredacted@gmail.com. Even if you don't want to be interviewed where your name is up on the screen and your face and all that good stuff, we don't have to do that. It can just be your voice. We can handle, you don't have to sign an affidavit. You can, even if you would like to, you've got to really, if you haven't told anybody about your experience, or you don't want to put a name necessarily behind it, but you want to get it out there, I have no problem with you emailing your story to us, and maybe we can fit it in and read it, all the way up to you being on like Danny and signing the affidavit and everything in between. So anybody who wants to participate really in any way, we could definitely do that. But
yeah, and help spread the word. We're growing. We're I'm happy where we're at, and we're progressively getting better and better. And it's really because of you guys. You guys are doing an outstanding job, and we appreciate it. You're hitting the like button, you're hitting the subscribe button, and you're hitting the share button. Share it, the videos and stuff like that. We greatly appreciate it.
yeah, we definitely do. All right, fellas, everybody. I hope everybody has a good night, and we're going to get out of here.
Have a good evening.
All right, you have a good evening too. Y'all
See
take
ya.
care.
Thanks. Bye.